All right, I've got 3 o'clock. As long as we're ready to go with our taping. I'm Brad Dial, current chairman of the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District. It's Wednesday, April 28th, 2018 at 3 o'clock, and I call this April 25th, 2018, 3 o'clock, I call this meeting to order. Could we have a roll call from the recording secretary?
Barnes. Here. Bauer. Chaplin. Here. Cho. Here. Farron. Present. Hannon. Present. Dial.
Present.
Quorum is present.
As usual, I warn everybody, please turn off or silence your cell phones or electronic devices. At this time, I'd ask for everyone to review today's agenda, and I'll ask for a motion and second.
I move that the agenda be approved as distributed. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve today's agenda. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Any audience participation today? Seeing none. Approval of our board minutes from January 25th, 2018. That's a closed session. Those are being give Matt a minute to review those. I'll also announce, while we have a little bit of a lull, we will be moving to closed session at the end of our meeting, and we will adjourn immediately after the closed session. We will not be coming back to open session after that. Yep. I'll ask for a motion for approve the closed session minutes at this time.
I move that the minutes of the January 25th, 2018 closed session be approved as distributed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the closed session minutes from January 25th, 2018. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Additionally, you have minutes from the board meeting from March 28th, 2018 that should be in your packet. If everybody's had a chance to review those, I'd like a motion and a second on those also.
I move we approve the minutes of March 28th, 2018 as distributed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from March 28th, 2018 of the regular board meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Carl, communications. No communications for the board, then the managing director's report.
Okay, this is for March, and March ridership, although it was down 7.9% from March of last year, about a third of that was made up by the fact that we had fewer weekdays this March than we did last March, and much of the rest of that decline is mostly identifiable as it's related to the MCOR reroutes starting back up again as construction ramped up in March. The operating revenue for March was 3.6% above March of last year, and the operating expenses were 5.6% above March of last year. The year-to-date operating revenue was $306,379 above budget, and the operating expenses are $2,875,909 under budget. As you have just over the last 2 months, you've gotten updates on the management systems that we are in the process, one system that we've previously implemented and had running and certified for several years, the environmental management system, and then the quality management system that we are in the process of getting certified, and we are also merging those two. So we gave you those presentations the last 2 months, and now we are holding workshops for our employee groups, which is essentially all of the employees, and we will be educating them on what the goals and the purposes of the management systems are, and that's all in preparation of the audit for the merged systems and the audit for the quality management system. So those are underway, and they will continue. In fact, we have some tomorrow, so they are continuing. That is my report, unless you have questions through page 42.
Any board questions for Carl? Jim?
The Illinois Terminal Director has changed, directorship. Any comments on that? Just time for a change?
Well, I wouldn't say it was time for a change. Is that individual came from the maintenance department before he was moved to Illinois Terminal probably 4.5 or 5 years ago. And we have had a void in the maintenance staffing, and we had a really good assistant. We had an individual at Illinois Terminal who acted ad hoc, I guess, in a way, like an assistant building manager. And he's a real quality individual, and we felt comfortable moving him up to building manager, which freed up Stu to be moved back into the maintenance department, so we could utilize him and the experience that he had in the maintenance department for, I don't know, 20, 25 years or something like, well, maybe not that long, 15 to 20 years he had worked in the maintenance department. So he had a lot of experience in maintenance, and it was something that Eric Broga, the maintenance director, really wanted to have him as a partner to help him keep the maintenance department progressing, and we just had the right personnel in Illinois Terminal to allow that to happen. So it just was good fits all around.
Got it.
Any other board questions or comments? Linda?
Sorry I was late, in case you already discussed this, but I saw the annual passes were down significantly, and I can't remember, did we raise prices last year?
We raised prices 2 years ago, and they have been on a steady decline since we did that. Although if there are other factors that I haven't identified as being related to the downward trend of annual passes, I don't know. The monthly passes are doing fairly well, and the token transit system is doing fairly well, and so I'm hopeful that will cause an upward trend, or at least an evening out in that trend as well. And then, as I think we talked about either last month or the month before, maybe next year we can talk about revisiting pass prices.
Okay, thank you.
Dick? Go ahead.
Page 30,
Hey, Jim? I think Dick's
That's
first.
okay. It's okay. On page 15, sale of maintenance services. It's kind of a big figure. Could you address that?
The sale of maintenance services is what our maintenance department does for, so this should be under revenues. Yeah. So that's the maintenance services that our maintenance department provides for C-carts, which is the rural transportation system. But we also do maintenance for, Brian, you may have to help me out on this. It's DRES, but it's the Division or Department of...
Oh, see, if you hadn't started saying it, I would have remembered.
Sorry.
Disability rehabilitation. There it is. Disability is the first one. Yes.
Okay, I think that's what it
Division-
used to be. I don't know that that's
Division of
what it is
Rehabilitation
anymore.
Educational
But anyway,
Services,
it's what used to be the disability. It's the group that provides disabled individuals on campus with transportation, and we do maintenance on their vehicles. We also do maintenance for the rural transit provider in Vermilion County, and on fairly rare occasions, we do maintenance for Danville Mass Transit in Danville when they have a job that their maintenance department isn't able to do. They don't have a body shop, and so we do body shop work for them, and they don't have personnel that will tackle like an engine redo or some really major types of maintenance, and so we'll occasionally help them out in that regard too. But we bill them for those services to pay for the time that our employees work on that.
Is there any, for lack of a better term, profit involved in that?
These are all public agencies that are sister agencies of ours, and so we don't have a profit. In fact, they all get the 65% discount that is a result of the state reimbursing us for transportation expenses, because all of those are eligible transportation expenses, and so they get that discounted rate. So it's good for them, and they have access to a top-notch, best in the region, probably best in the state maintenance department, and so it works out really well for everybody.
Anybody else for Carl? Jim, do you have something else?
Yeah, just the $2 million on page 30 to Busey, that was related to,
That probably was just a transfer from one account to another account for cash flow purposes. But let me turn around and see if Jolene has anything to offer different than that.
What page is that on?
page 30, $2 million to Busey.
It's toward the bottom, Jolene, the third from the bottom.
Yeah, that's an internal transfer. We use that account a lot to transfer to the payroll accounts and other operating accounts.
Okay?
Anything else for Carl? Up to page 42. Go ahead. Dick?
One other question on page 12. The Illinois terminal operating revenue has been down every month since October. Why is that the case?
What page are you looking at?
Usually if their revenue's down, it's directly related to City View, which is the fourth floor of the terminal that we rent for receptions and different meetings like that. But that's usually where you're going to see most of the fluctuation. Most of their other revenue is driven by other rents in the building and other rental properties we have in the downtown area in general. But usually if you're going to see fluctuation, it's going to be that. And then there's a little bit in there that will fluctuate related to the commissions that are pulled in from the vending machines, the payphone, and the ATM.
Has it been difficult to rent those spaces out recently?
Well, the building is fully leased. So what Jolene is talking about on the fourth floor is the banquet facility. And on the whole, that is not a function that we have, well, we certainly don't have complete control over. We only have partial control over. The caterer mostly has control over that in terms of the jobs that are booked for that facility. And so if she's not booking as many events at that location versus some of the other locations that she works in or does events at, then we'll see our revenue dip down, though we still get the base rental from her for the rental of the kitchen. So that's where that fluctuation comes in that Jolene mentioned.
Anything else for Carl? Up to page 42. Seeing none, we'll move on to the board committee reports. The first committee is administration, which I don't think is met. Dick, anything to comment on? No? Facilities committee, Jim.
Yes, we had met with Carl and our other committee member, Ms. Bauer. And just, Carl updated us with new initiatives on grant proposals for the Illinois terminal, and also some working on the intergovernmental agreement related to the Illinois terminal. Does that pretty much summarize what we talked on, Carl?
Yep.
Linda? So it was productive, and it was my first meeting as chair of that committee, so it was very productive for me in getting together with our committee. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Service delivery, Matt, have you guys met at this point? Okay. Nothing to comment on that? Okay. Moving on to our first action item, and that is ordinance number 2018-1. That's authorizing the issuance of $10 million capital facility notes, Series 2018, and $6 million line of credit notes, taxable Series 2018, to finance capital costs of MTD. I'll ask for a motion and a second to consider this item.
Well, for the purposes of discussion, I move we approve.
Second.
Carl, you want to talk about this, or Jolene? Jolene's going to talk about this.
Do you want me to do the summary, or are you okay doing the summary, or? I can? Okay.
She's going to fill in. She's
All
going to
right.
fill in the blanks.
These are the loan mechanisms that we have used for just about 20 years that we use as a funding mechanism for capital projects. It allows us to utilize our state operating grant to fund capital projects as long as it is, as long as the project is initially paid for with debt service, so borrowed funds. So the principal and interest on those borrowed funds are eligible operating expenses as long as they are used for a capital purpose. And so we've had many successful projects completed using this mechanism. We generally borrow the money for a very, very short period of time, only until we get the reimbursement from the state through the through our operating assistance grant with the state. And so it can be anywhere from, well, depending on what kind of project it is. If it's a purchase of a piece of equipment, then that turnaround can be very quickly, and we might only borrow the funds for a few months. If it's a construction project and we start borrowing funds at the beginning of the construction project and it takes just hypothetically 12 months, then you know, we would have the principal and interest for the full 12 months on that project. And so this is the current note that you approved last year. They are expiring at the end of this month, and so these are the renewals with that same banking institution, First Bank, to accomplish the same tasks.
How does the bank get reimbursed?
The bank gets reimbursed by, we make the payment. So we get reimbursed from the state. So for every $100 that we borrow, we get $65 from the state, and $35 are district funds. And so we pay $100 back to the bank, but 65 of that is state money and 35 is district money.
But they have to have some sort of fee for doing all this.
Well, they get the interest on the borrowed funds, and then there is a, when we initiate the borrowing mechanism, there, I think one had a $1,000 fee and the other one has a $1,500 fee. I believe those are the fees, but they're very small nominal fees.
Thank you.
Margaret.
Just a clarification question. In the collateral for one of them is a bunch of our buses, but what are UCC filings? So they could take everything we have, typewriters and all, or whatever, if we don't pay up?
I might let Ken answer that one.
Do I need to speak into one?
Yes, so this is Ken Beth. He is our bond attorney that we used for this arrangement, so he might be better to answer this.
Tap that button there and get that green light.
Okay, there you go.
Ken. Thank you.
I'm Ken Bass with the law firm of Evans, Froelich, Beth, and Chamley here in Champaign. And as mentioned, I am a bond counsel, and although we're dealing with promissory notes here, all financing instruments for IRS purposes fall within the definition of a bond. These UCC filings are not related to my part of it, but they relate to the bank's part of it, because they're the ones who are taking the security. And UCC stands for Uniform Commercial Code. And in order to let the world know that the bank has this security interest, they file these UCC statements with the Illinois Secretary of State so that they are on record, and if anybody else wants to get that same collateral, it's incumbent on them to check with the Secretary of State to make sure it's not already pledged. So that's what the UCC filings are.
But the good news, Margaret, is that we don't have a single typewriter that they can take. Yeah.
Exactly. Any other board questions for Carl? Jim, Linda?
Okay, so that clarifies it, I think, because I was looking at the text and thought, are we selling bonds? But we're not selling bonds, we're having notes with the bank.
We are simply borrowing money with the bank, but as Ken indicated, from I guess from a legal perspective, they refer to all types of borrowing mechanisms as bonds, even though we're not selling bonds.
So my second question would, how do we select First Bank? I know we have a history with them, but 10 million is a really, I don't know if that's real attractive to banks or not, but how do we pick them?
Well, we have used a variety of banks. This is only the second year that we'll be with First Bank, and so it has moved around to different bank institutions. In the past, or there are, I would say, irregular times that we take proposals from banks. We didn't this time because we have a handful of projects that we are in the midst of, and so we actually are carrying a balance over from the current notes into the new notes, and so trying to do that with a different bank would be complicated and messy, and so we just made the decision to stay with First Bank, and First Bank has been very good to us and good to work with, and so mostly for project management reasons, we didn't even consider going out to bid or taking proposals on this time around.
Jim?
Because of a historical perspective, I would guess I was interested, why 10 million and 6 million? Just that's from a historical basis, what you probably would not exceed that?
Yeah.
Why 10 million versus 15 million versus 7 million?
Well, some of it is what the bank is willing to do, but most of it is what the need is to complete the projects for the upcoming year. In addition to that, some of it is, and the reason there are two different mechanisms, a 10 and a 6, rather than just one $16 million note, is they actually are, and Ken and Jolene probably are going to be able to give you, well, they certainly will be able to give you a better technical answer than I can give you, but in general, they're treated a little differently. The 10 million is fully only for capital projects. The 6 million, while we also will use that for capital projects, it also is a line of credit, and the reason we have that is so, an operating line of credit. And so just as a for instance, if the state got in a situation again where they were significantly delayed in their payments to us, and they're totally paid up, they're caught up with us, by the way, but if they were to get behind again and then we ran into a cash flow problem, then we have this operating line of credit in case of an emergency that we could draw down on for operating purposes to make payroll or to buy fuel, or, do these operating things to keep the system running and functioning if we had to.
So over the last number of years, it's always been 10 and 6? Or does it
No,
vary?
no,
Or
not
say
a-
5 years ago, what was it? I mean, obviously, it's a stretch, but approximately.
I think it was 4 million. Last year was the first year that we actually went up to 16 million, and then at least the prior few years, we were sitting at 4 million.
Jim, one of the reasons for the 10 and the 6 is the 10, as you noticed even from the title, is going to be a tax-exempt borrowing, and the 6 is going to be a taxable borrowing. The 10 million also relates to an Internal Revenue Code requirement having to do with the interest rate. And this note is going to be a bank-qualified note, which means that the bank is able to deduct a part of its carrying costs that go into this note, whereas on normal tax-exempt financings, you cannot make any deduction for carrying costs. So it allows the district to get a more favorable rate for that 10 million loan than it would have otherwise.
And is that somewhat the reason why there's two interest rates being charged for?
Right, one's tax exempt and the other's taxable.
Thank you.
Matt?
You mentioned some of the balances being passed over. How much of the 10 or the 6 are we using? And I guess you mentioned that also 65% part of that downstate assistance is to reimburse the principal. So ideally, you don't want to be carrying the balances over each year. Is there a timeline of when you will, I guess, pay off some of those balances, whatever those may be?
Well, carrying the balance doesn't impact the ability to use the state reimbursement on it, and so that reimburses principal and interest, and so there are 2 points in time that I think you're referring to. One is the one that we're dealing with right now, which is one promissory note ending and another promissory note beginning. And we're in the middle of those projects, so we're carrying the balance over because the projects aren't completed yet. So from an asset management perspective, we can't pay them off because we don't have an asset yet that we have control of. We have to wait until the project is done. Right. The other date is at the end of our fiscal year when one grant period ends and another grant period begins with the state, and again, from one year to the next doesn't make overall, it doesn't make a difference. The reimbursement percentage stays the same from one year to the next with the state. It's just it has to be included in 2 years' budgets. So. For instance, I'm just finishing up the budget for the next year and the state grant application, and so I'm having to take some of these projects that we have that are underway but not completed, and we're having to figure out the tail end of those, what little pieces that we have left of it that will go into the next year. So it can be tricky sometimes figuring out exactly what that amount is going to be, but we have some flexibility in that we can take money from one line item to another line item if we need to, if our estimate wasn't quite right on the money, so to speak.
I guess to simplify the question is, what percentage of the 10 or the 6 are we using currently with a balance transfer?
Oh, the balance transfer is about,
It's right around 3 million.
Yeah, it's just slightly above 3 million, maybe 3.1 million or
Yeah.
something like
Of the
that.
16.
Yeah.
That's the total amount that we currently have on balance for these projects that are midway, and that's what we're transferring from one note to the next note.
And the bulk of that is 1207, the CDL Training Center, which isn't complete yet.
Any other questions for Carl or Jolene on this item? Carl, the only question is, there aren't any material differences between this line of credit and the previous line of credits that we've taken out. We have these to provide us with flexibility for our operations. Is that accurate?
That would be accurate.
Okay. Anything else from the board? We'll need a roll call on this item if there's no further discussion.
Barnes? Bauer?
Yes.
Chaplin? Cho? Farron? Hannon?
Yes.
Dial.
Yes, that motion carries. Our next action item is the University of Illinois, or I'm sorry, University Avenue. I've got so much stuff from my notes on here. University Avenue connecting sidewalk contract. Oh, Brenda.
Okay. Previously, you had authorized an easement of the sidewalk to be constructed to the city of Urbana upon completion of the construction. Since that approval, we have open bids on the project. We did receive 6 bids. 4 were below estimated cost, 2 were above. The lowest responsive and responsible bid was from Foyt's Contractors. The amount came in under budget, and so we are able to do our base bid plus the bid alternate. Foyt's was able to exceed the DBE goal for the project, which was set at 4.63%. They were able to come in at 4.76%. And once again, the sidewalk is connecting our operations and administration facility at 1101 East University, connecting it to the newly constructed CDL training facility at 1207 East University.
Any questions for Brenda on this
I
item?
have a question.
Bruce, go ahead.
How big is this? What kind of area are we talking about, or length of sidewalk of a certain width?
I'm looking at Jane. The length of the sidewalk.
Length of the sidewalk, Jane.
Size, the area, or the length of a standard width?
You're asking for the length of the sidewalk? I'm sorry, the length of the sidewalk?
Or the area?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think any of us can answer that off the top of our heads in terms of feet or meters, but if you can picture our facilities, our admin office, and then down the street to the east, the training center, can you picture that? So it goes from the west end of our admin office all the way to the entrance of 1207.
Okay.
And it's about 5 feet wide.
Right.
So the diagram of that was in last month's board packet.
Just looking for a per square foot cost, per square yard, something like that.
Any other questions, Matt?
This is the CDL training facility on University for, I guess, the new training for bus drivers. And did we have like a budget for this project? And I don't know, are we on budget or above budget?
For 1207,
Yeah.
that I can't answer. This is a separate project from 1207.
The construction bids that we got for 1207 were less than the final budget. This sidewalk was not a part of that original budget, but we, midway through the process of designing 1207, decided to add training ground for bicycle training, and so it's got paint lines on the pad in the training area for bicycle training. The problem is when the bicycle groups or the park district bring people in to do that, there's no parking at 1207 because the entire space is used up for the training ground. And so we want those people who are coming in for that to park at 1101. But then there was no way for them to get from 1101 to 1207, so that started the process of putting the sidewalk in. Our trainees, they drive a bus down there, so it was not something that we initially thought we would need, or we didn't even think about it because the trainees are driving a bus down there to be trained on. It wasn't until the bicycle aspect of the training came into play.
So do you have like a general idea of what we've spent so far on the training facility?
I do not have that on the top of my head. I don't know if Jane does.
What was the question?
The total expenditure for this training facility?
The
For
construction
the
of
1207 CDL construction project? I don't know the number off the top of my head. It's in the $2 million range. 2.1 we're thinking. I could get you a better number if I was at my desk. They've run into general construction project findings like storm sewers that need work and pipes that they run into and things like that. Do you have anything to add, Kirk?
No, I mean, there's some extra costs, but they were pretty minimal considered.
I think we had originally budgeted 2.5 for it.
Additional questions on this item? How about that? At this time, I would ask for a motion to approve the University Avenue connecting sidewalk contract with Foyt's. Somebody moved it. I didn't hear anybody second it.
I thought I heard somebody down there.
Said so moved.
Okay, second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve this item. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is the University of Illinois Intergovernmental Agreement for Campus Service for fiscal year 2019 through 2021.
This is the service agreement that provides universal access for students, faculty, and staff on MTD routes, and also provides for additional campus routes. And we are in the 29th year of having an agreement partnership with the university, and so this 3-year contract will carry us to year 33 of that partnership, and it's something that is that we believe is beneficial to the campus and the students and the community as a whole.
Any board question or comment on this item? Linda.
I happen to work on campus, and not for the university, but there's certain times of the day that cars are lined up so far back that if they're waiting at a stop sign, it could take half an hour to go 2 blocks. So to the extent that MTD reduces that traffic, so it wouldn't take an hour to go 2 blocks, I think not just for the students, but anyone in the campus area, that's a real benefit to have more people on one vehicle.
Yeah, and that actually is one of the initiating reasons why the conversations between MTD and the university started in the first place, was not only as a function of improved and enhanced safety, but also for that kind of traffic mitigation and prevention of having to build very costly parking structures on campus to accommodate those cars that are filling up the streets. And so that's all baked into the original concept.
Anything else for Carl on this item from the board? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion and second to move this item to a vote. It's been moved and seconded to approve the University of Illinois Intergovernmental Agreement for campus service for fiscal year 2019 through fiscal year 2021. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? That motion carries. I just wanted to take a moment of personal privilege to thank all of the individuals that were involved in this process. This is a very important partnership, both to the university and to the Mass Transit District, to the citizens of Champaign-Urbana. And first, I'd like to thank Chancellor Robert Jones, Vice Chancellor Mike DiLorenzo, Brian Farber, who's here in the room, Loa Walambe, the staff, all of the staff at the Chancellor's office, staff at the University of Illinois Legal Counsel office, and again, an important partnership for us, long-lasting partnership, almost 30 years now, and will be with the completion of this agreement. Additionally, I'd like to thank our wonderful staff, Carl Gannett, Fred Stavens, Beth Brunk, Andrew Johnson, and many of our other staff members kind of behind the scenes who worked diligently to put this agreement together. With that, that is our last action item for today. Our next meeting.
Brad?
Yep.
Can I, since you threw so many names out there, can I just mention that Jacob Rylick, the
Yeah,
student
I was
representative,
going to
also-
mention the students, and I neglected to.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I had that on there, and I skipped over it. Jacob, thank you. And all the students who ultimately benefit from them and the staff and the community as a whole that benefit from this enhanced service for campus. Our first time that the board will have an opportunity to meet again on outreach to the public is for Southwest Champaign Outreach Open House, and that'll be discussing on-demand service. That will be Wednesday, May 2nd, next Wednesday, from 5 until 7 p.m. at Champaign Fire Station 6 at 3911 West Windsor Road, just east of Staley, 5 to 7 on May 2nd. The next opportunity for the public to come and learn about the MTD is our fall 2018 revision to fares, routes, and schedules. That's a public hearing and open house at the Illinois Terminal on the 4th floor. That'll be May 24th from 4 to 6 p.m. And our next regular board meeting will be May 30th, 2018 at 3 o'clock right here in the Champaign City Council chambers. Any other items for our meeting today before we move to closed session? Dick.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn into closed session to consider litigation which is pending against, affecting, or on behalf of the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District, followed by adjournment.
It's been moved and seconded. Recording secretary, could we have a roll call, please?
Barnes,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Chaplin, Cho, Farron, Hannon,
Yes.
Dial.
Yes, and we, as I mentioned before, we will not be returning to open session. We'll adjourn at the end of our closed session today. Thank you for your attendance.